selected berths in the harbors of Sumer and Akkad. I chose Sumer and Akkad because it is historically, archaeologically, and religiously proven that Noah, peace be upon him, and Abraham, peace be upon him, were from them. Thus, they are the origin of religion, and religion originated from them at the beginning of time. And the religion originates from them at the end times. Thus, they are people who grieved for thousands of years about Dumuzi, or the faithful son, and they waited for Gilgamesh, the frontline warrior. And people who have come after them in Mesopotamia still grieve over Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, and wait for the Mahdi whom the people who came before them were waiting for, Gilgamesh, whose appearance was promised in their country thousands of years ago. We ask Allah to reform their state and guide them to His straight path, and seal for them with good. As for those who wait for the Mahdi's appearance from a place other than Sumer and Akkad, the country of his fathers Noah and Abraham, peace be upon them, then they will wait for a long time, and it will be an endless wait. The first birth, the epics of Sumer, Akkad, and the divine religion. Some or all the researchers in the history of the ancient Near East or the Middle East consider religion to be purely a human product, and that it started with deifying the goddess Ishtar with her different names, whose statues they found in various sizes spread throughout the ancient civilizations of the Near East, which spanned for over 9,000 years BC. And they justified this religious start by saying that the society was dominated by the woman in the form of the mother, around whom the children gather, and these children knew only that they belonged to her. Therefore, according to them, the woman, the great mother Ishtar, was sanctified and statues were made for her, and after a period of time, the human society turned patriarchal when agriculture was discovered, and society started to settle, and families and homes were built. And this resulted in the introduction of male gods into the temples, and this is how religion was formed. Religion later evolved into Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and others as well. But those who built their theory based upon ancient female statues forget that their theory can be easily refuted by the assumption that these statues were only made for sexual enticement and do not represent something sacred. So the existence of a sacred female for whom a statue was made in a certain era does not allow the investigative researcher to judge that every statue made of a female before her represents her. And this opinion that the ancient man built tools of sexual enticement does exist and is presented by some archaeologists. Also, there are archaeological texts that describe the goddess Ishtar, or Inanna, known in Sumer and Akkad, with the attributes of this world that the human lives in. So in the texts, she is not the mother and not even a real female. Rather, she is the Dunya, to whom the king Tammuz, Dumuzi, refused to prostrate to when he sat upon the throne, like other kings prostrated to her. So she handed Tammuz, the faithful son, to the demons to kill him.
Inanna proceeds to the two Sumerian cities, Umma and Bad Tabira, whose two deities prostrate themselves before her and are thus saved from the demons. Then she arrives at the city of Kulub, whose tutelary deity is Dumuzi. The poem continues. Dumuzi put on a noble robe, he sat high on his seat, the demons seized him by his thighs. The 7 demons rush at him as at the side of a sick man. The shepherds play not the flute and pipe before him. She fastened the eye upon him, the eye of death, spoke the word against him, the word of wrath. uttered the cry against him, the cry of guilt.
As for him, carry him off!
And this is the dunya that Gilgamesh refused to submit to when he sat on the throne and wore his crown. Gilgamesh opened his mouth and answered glorious Ishtar.
But as for making you my wife, that I will not. How will it go with me? Your lovers have found you like a brazier which smolders in the cold, a back door which keeps out neither squall of wind nor storm, a castle which crushes the garrison, pitch that blackens the bearer, a water skin that chafes the carrier, a stone which falls from the parapet, a battering ram turned back from the enemy, a sandal that trips the wearer. Which of your lovers did you ever love forever? What shepherd of yours has pleased you for all time?
The theory that the origin of religion is deifying the mother is just an assumption that does not rely on solid scientific proof. This is why I do not see a need for detailed refutations of such assumptions. But I do see it necessary to clarify the proofs and indications of the divine origin of the Sumerian religion. So this topic is about proving that the Sumerian religion is a divine religion that existed previously and was distorted. So here we want to clarify that the Sumerians who knew about ablution with water and knew about prayer, fasting, dua, and supplication were a religious people and their religion was divine. So the Sumerian epics and stories include events from the unseen that occurred thousands of years after the Sumerians spoke of them. Yes, perhaps their religion was distorted during some periods, but it is a divine religion. Just as the people of Mecca were a people of a distorted Abrahamic Hanafi religion, and they worshipped and sanctified idols. And just as today, there are Salafis or Wahhabis who are worshippers of an idol and are inheritors of the old worshippers of idols in Mecca. They say they are Muslims, but they worship a big idol whom they believe to exist in the sky and not on the earth, and who has 2 hands with fingers and 2 feet and 2 eyes. So the issue of distorting the divine religion existed and still does exist. And if we were to return to the beginning of the divine religion, we find that Adam, peace be upon him, came to earth with the first divine religion, and it had the stories of his faithful sons after him. And naturally, the people were supposed to memorize these stories, narrate them, and pass them on. And the stories and epics of the Sumerians at times are only narrations of these sacred and related stories, as the Sumerians narrated the story of the flood in detail, and long before the Torah existed. The flood, the first Noah.
That the biblical deluge story is not original with the Hebrew redactors of the Bible has been known from the time of the discovery and deciphering of the 11th tablet of the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh by the British Museum's George Smith. The Babylonian deluge myth itself, however, is of Sumerian origin. In 1914, Arno Pobel published a fragment consisting of the lower third of a 6-column Sumerian tablet in the Nippur collection of the University Museum, the contents of which are devoted in large part to the story of the flood. This fragment still remains unique and unduplicated. Badly broken as the text is, these passages are nevertheless of significance. They include a number of revealing statements concerning the creation of man, the origin of kingship, and the existence of at least 5 antediluvian cities.
History begins at Sumer, Kramer. Yes, perhaps they are occasionally distorted stories, especially from the perspective of other religions, due to time and the imposition of the human whim within them that is tainted with satanic whispering. But is something which is distorted always void of truth? Have we wondered where the legacy of Adam and Noah went, and where this legacy was in the time of the Sumerians or the Akkadians? Where did the legacy of the divine religion that existed before the flood go? It is not reasonable that Noah and those with him would be concerned with saving goats and cows and not with preserving the divine religion from Adam, peace be upon him, within their chests. And mankind after Noah, peace be upon him, represented by the Sumerians and Akkadians, and followed by the Babylonians and the Syrians, also narrated the history of Adam and Noah and the high sacred entities, just as they narrated the history of the kings, farmers, and craftsmen, even if the history is distorted by stories passed down through generations. Therefore, the result is that the Sumerian or Akkadian religion is the religion of Adam and Noah, perhaps distorted at times by deification of everything that is deified, such as the dunya and the righteous people. And an example of this distortion is that an attempt to distort the Epic of Gilgamesh was discovered in the artifacts, and this of course demonstrates two issues. The first is that the Epic of Gilgamesh is a religious text, as no one cares for distorting a literary text. The second is that the text of the Epic of Gilgamesh that reached us is definitely not free of distortion. Taha Bakr says,
And perhaps the strangest thing recently found by archaeologists in the archaeological site known as Sultan Tepe in southern Turkey, near Haran, was parts of the epic and a strange letter forged by an old writer in the 2nd century BC. That letter was as if written by Gilgamesh and was addressed to one of the ancient kings, and Gilgamesh was requesting him to send gemstones to make a talisman for his friend Enkidu, and it weighed as much as 30 mins.
And when comparing this original and various pieces with the text of Nineveh, they seem to be valuable information, and not only to bridge the gaps, but they also completely showed that the poem or epic of Gilgamesh did not have one form in the time of the Assyrians, and this is proof that the legend evolved notably throughout generations. In other words, the writers did not copy the old text in a literal and honest manner, rather they added, took out and twisted. And this is what proves or take part in proving the idea that spread, although wrong, that the East never was and never will be firm and steady.
Legends of Babylon, Charles. So if there have been deliberate attempts of distortion of written texts, then the same definitely applies to texts that are narrated verbally and before the era of writing, and certainly their distortion is greater. And when they were written in the first era of writing, they were written in their distorted form. Therefore, we can conclude that the stories of the Deluge, Dumuzi, and Gilgamesh, and other stories of Sumerian Akkadian origins were certainly not written identically to the stories narrated before the era of writing.